Nearly 400 people are still unaccounted for in Maui County after the devastating wildfires earlier this month. Officials released a validated list of names put together by the FBI.
We're releasing this list of 388 names today because we know that it will help with the investigation. But we're also balancing that because we do know that once those names come out, it can and will cause pain for some folks that are affected by this.
Police hope it can be used to help identify anyone on the list who is actually accounted for. Officials have said at least 115 people died, making it the deadliest wildfire disaster in the U.S. in more than 100 years. Crews have searched 100% of the single-story homes in the disaster area. They're now going through multi-story homes and commercial properties. Dollar Tree is taking a defensive approach to shoplifting. The CEO's new plan includes no longer stocking certain items at stores where they tend to be stolen. Other plans include moving some items behind checkout counters and putting some items behind locks. More companies are trying to protect themselves from shoplifting and organized retail crime. Kohl's said it was using cables to secure products in stores and only offering in-store testing of beauty products. It's also having more staff in fitting rooms and having more workers near the front doors. Target and Walmart have also spoken out about the rise in crime recently. A National Retail Federation survey shows that retail outlets suffered $94.5 billion in losses in 2021, primarily from theft. Speaking of theft, a California man was detained for stealing $1.8 million in luxury items from a hotel room. He then allegedly sold the stolen goods to a Florida buyer. The victims were from Brazil and staying at the Peninsula Beverly Hills Hotel in California for a fashion event. They said they didn't know the suspect, Jobson DeCastro. DeCastro took an Uber to the hotel and allegedly tricked hotel staff into giving him a key to the victim's room. He made multiple Uber trips to the hotel and also charged food to the victim's room account when he ate at the hotel bar. Authorities say he messaged a buyer for the stolen goods over Instagram. The buyer's store was located in Miami, and DeCastro allegedly brought the stolen items there. Authorities tracked him using GPS data from his Uber rides and via Apple AirTags located in one of the suitcases. Authorities also discovered DeCastro is being investigated for a separate hotel theft. U.S. military aircraft has crashed near a San Diego Marine Corps air base. One person was on board. Now a search and rescue operation is underway. The FA-18 Hornet crashed in a remote area east of San Diego Marine Corps' air station Miramar. The condition of the pilot is not known. The aircraft crashed on government property. No structures on the ground were damaged. The Hornet is the first U.S. military aircraft designed for all-weather combat. It's not currently in production, but a newer Super Hornet variant is still being made. The Marine Corps began using it in 1983 and the Navy in 1984. The military plans to revive it from service to retire it from service in 2023. The Federal Aviation Administration announced it will invest millions into airports nationwide after a number of near-fatal collisions. Multiple close calls over the past year were confirmed by both the agency and the National Transportation Safety Board. Earlier this year, Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg highlighted a rise in mistakes, including those on runways, during plane pushbacks at gates, in control towers, and on flight decks. To address the issue, the FAA will allocate over $120 million to prevent runway incursions and support airport infrastructure projects. Another challenge is the number of fully trained air traffic controllers has decreased by 10% over the past decade, despite a 5% increase in airport traffic. A federal judge has tossed a lawsuit from the Republican National Committee. It accused Google of filtering the RNC's campaign emails to Gmail users' spam folders. The RNC filed the lawsuit last October and claimed the popular search engine was discriminating against it for its political views. The committee argued that filtering could hurt its fundraising efforts. Google previously denied Republican criticism that spam filters are biased against conservatives. In his ruling, the U.S. district court judge wrote the RNC had not, quote, sufficiently pled that Google acted in bad faith by filtering their messages into spam folders. The judge also wrote that Google was protected under a federal statute that shields internet companies over third-party content they host. The judge gave the RNC a chance to amend the lawsuit. Turning to Michigan, flights are resuming out of Detroit. Roads at the city's largest airport have reopened following flooding yesterday from storms. The tunnels connecting to the McNamara terminal flooded overnight into Thursday and were closed. The FAA says there are still ground delays at Detroit Metropolitan Wayne County Airport due to the prior ground stop. According to tracking site FlightAware, nearly a fifth of flights originating in Detroit were canceled yesterday. Multiple carriers were affected. Delta, with Detroit as one of its hubs, is hit the hardest with 96 flights scrubbed. More than $1 trillion. That's how much the U.S. expects to borrow for the current quarter. And TD Business's Don Ma has more on the Department of Treasury's announcement.
And here to talk to me is Georgino, NTD contributor and risk consultant in the greater LA area. So the U.S. Treasury is expecting to borrow more than $1 trillion of debt in the current quarter. I mean, to me, this is just a huge amount of debt in such a short time. I think a discussion about debt can be very nuanced, and we'll go into more detail later. But first, let me just get you what you think about this. Are you concerned about what's happening?
I'm very concerned, Dodd. Our society as a whole did not necessarily have a great example set for them in terms of tone at the top by our federal government. And when it comes to our federal government and its reckless spending policy, the scary part, though, is that the federal government has a printing press. Your average American can't print more money at home and cover their losses. The U.S. government can. And it does. And it also issues more and more treasury bonds, takes on more and more debt with the public, and sometimes with other countries, and at times with our adversaries. It's very concerning.
So I want to pose this point. You know, if I'm being fair, we're spending a lot, but there's arguments that fiscal spending and injection of liquidity into the economy could actually keeping the recession that we've been talking about since last year, could be keeping the recession at bay.
Okay, so that puts inflation completely off to the side and at all costs prioritizes preventing recessions and so forth. Printing more money, issuing more debt, injecting more into the money supply. Our country has shouldered itself with an unfathomable amount of debt that may not sit on the shoulders of current generations, but will sit on the shoulders of generations yet born.
How do we fix this? You know, what are the solutions? Has the ship sailed?
I think the ship might have sailed, but as a country, we can't think that way. We're Americans. We problem solve. That's what we do. But I don't think the problem solves itself. We have to solve it. And the only way we can do that is through honest, imprudent discussions about where our money is being spent. It's an issue that I think Americans, per polling from Pew Research and AP and others, are starting to take more seriously and care about. 57% of Americans I saw in a poll care about the national debt as a serious issue. But that's not reflected in the agenda of our lawmakers.
All right, very comprehensive discussion today. Thank you so much for your time, Derek.
I appreciate it as always, Don. Thanks for having me on. I look forward to next time.